Welcome to the series kickoff of our MSP Marketing Insights. Really excited to be here with my co-host, Maddie. Maddie, why don't we start with you? Will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. My name's Maddie Metheny. I'm Director of Revenue Marketing at ConnectWise. Our team is responsible for all of the campaigns and just driving demand for the company as a whole. Previously, I used to run partner marketing here, so I'm super familiar with how SMBs market their services to drive revenue as well. Angus, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
As you can see from my title, I'm CMO here at ConnectWise, but like Maddie, passionate about marketing and definitely a marketing nerd. Love to talk about it pretty much nonstop. And we're really excited to dive in and engage with our audience just on the kinds of marketing or even sales priorities that you have. We found a lot of interest in this area from MSPs because after all, many of you are entrepreneurs growing your business, and marketing and sales are key drivers to achieve that. And Maddie in her past actually ran our partner program and helped design it. So sure, she has some phenomenal insights from that experience. First off, we were going to focus this session on a MSP benchmarking report and survey that we did last year. We surveyed over 1,000 MSPs, and I believe over 75% of them were from the US and 77% were MSPs specifically, so there were some other types of TSPs in the mix, and about 50% were between 1 and 5 million in revenue. So from those more than 1,000 results, we got some fairly interesting insights. What do you think, Maddie? What did you find?
Yeah, we did. There are a couple of things that stood out to me, really two things. The first one, and I just want to share a couple stats in general that I found interesting. The first one is that people are limited on budget, right? So we found a lot of people who really only 15% of them have one dedicated marketing resource or more, which is interesting. So there's really a lack of marketing resources across this space. And a lot of MSPs also have less than $10,000 in marketing spend. So definitely trying to get creative with how to drive demand, definitely in this market. Also, there's a couple channels that MSPs focus on, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And so those are really a couple of the ones that I saw that really stood out. But since we're talking a little bit about low cost channels, Angus, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't be surprised because about half of the MSPs we surveyed were between the $1 and $5 million revenue range, but it is interesting that only 15% had more than one person looking after marketing, and almost half had less than $10,000 to spend on marketing. So you have to really count your pennies carefully. So I think one of the areas I think is interesting that can engage your target audience is this concept of a content engine, and building a content engine relative to some key channels can absolutely make a difference. So understanding who your target personas are, what they care about, where their pain points are, and then what your differentiated value is from an IT services standpoint, where you want to stand out from the crowd, or where you hear from your existing customers that you stand out from the crowd, can form the basis of some key topics or conversations you want to own over a longer period of time. So once you've identified those 3 to 5 themes or conversations to own or topics you want to focus on, then you can start thinking about the conversation starters or the hooks and special guests you might have. So industry influencers in your space, or folks who are known about town or in your particular region. Of course, you can leverage your existing customers that have been really happy with your services and successful leveraging your services. So from there, you can build out a schedule, kind of a content calendar. And what we like to do is start with virtual events like these. Virtual events are a great way to create some urgency and force a deadline. So you make sure that you get everything mostly prepared for the day that you actually have to present. And then you can have an interesting hook, a what and a so what, 2 or 3 best practices, a couple of stories, and a key takeaway or CTA. And the benefit of doing that, especially with all the wonderful technology and tools we have today, is that you can have that automatically transcribed. You can leverage generative AI tools to turn that into different formats, different lengths, different audiences, and all of a sudden you have a nice library of material you can use for social media posts, social media articles, case studies, customer testimonials if you had a customer, and you can also bypass a lot of the approval process because they've already been on that live event with you. But anyway, having a continuous sort of content engine and virtual event series can be really beneficial in streamlining the content production process and engaging your audience on the topics they care about and the differentiated value you can provide. So I know, Maddie, there were a few channels that MSPs really care about from a low-cost perspective. What are some of the ones you think are interesting or you've seen success with?
Yeah, one of the ones that we've definitely seen success with, especially when when I was leading partner marketing, was email. So email is a good one. I think one of the easiest ways to get engaged with people is start with who you already have in your customer base, right? You can always expand your services. Maybe somebody is just doing IT services today with you, but they're not doing security services, right? So that's a really good place to start, and you already know that they are a fit because they are a current customer. So a lot of times what we'll see in working with partners is essentially starting with email. It can feel overwhelming for sure to start with email if you haven't done it before, but the biggest thing that you need to figure out is that list first. And once you figure out the list, even if it's your customers, you're good to go, right? So if you start with your customers, that's a really easy way to get started, just so you don't have to feel overwhelmed with who am I contacting, who's new. Start with your customers first, and that gives you that confidence that you can build before you start going to prospects. The next thing really is how do you select a platform. So there's a ton of platforms out there that you can leverage that are definitely low cost. There's MailChimp, there's Constant Contact, there's GlassHive, which GlassHive for some partners is complimentary for our partners in the partner program, depending on the level that you're at, or at a discount if you are just a partner for ConnectWise. So that's huge. So if you have that platform, you're good to go. The next is just making sure you have that compelling content. So if you do start with a live stream, it's really easy, like Angus was saying, to just repurpose what your speakers have already said. So if you got those SMEs on there, you can create something. If you even can create an easy PDF, or if you start with something through, say, a partner program that already has some content and you can just adjust it, that's a lot easier way to start than starting from scratch. So that's key. And then just making sure you have eye-catching templates, which again, all of those providers that I just mentioned have those, so you don't have to start from scratch. And then really at the end of the day, it's just about testing and optimizing. The first one you do may not be good, and that's okay. I think what I see a lot of times is partners will get stuck with marketing because it didn't work necessarily. So marketing, I like to say, is it's constantly a test, and there's a lot of failures involved. You're always testing, optimizing, and trying to get better results. It's almost like a science.
Maddie, some great tips there. Starting with customers, for example, making sure you have a very engaging template. So I hear from time to time that email is dead. Is that true? What have you seen from email?
I would not say email's dead. I think, it's one of those things where if you rely on any single channel, it's not good, right? So especially with people's, I guess, attention span, it's going less and less, especially with the introduction of things like Amazon and people can get packages in 2 days. That kind of thing is happening across everywhere, and our attention span's really, really low. So I think the more channels that you can push out, the better, just because if you rely on one channel, yes, you could not necessarily see the results, but if they're seeing the same thing from you on email and on LinkedIn Lives and if you eventually get into display and all of those kind of things, we'll talk about that in another one. But I think it's important to just make sure you're diversifying your channels to cut through the noise, because of course other competitors are there as well.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. But Maddie makes a really good point there about channels. As you get to understand your personas, where they hand out physically and where they hang out virtually, and who they listen to, constantly refining that is really important, because you don't want to be in a channel that isn't really used by your personas. But then again, Maddie made the point about measuring and iterating. So if you see, oftentimes a campaign just comes down to a combination of an interesting topic, an audience, some content, and the right channel. So the combination of those four things. But then if you see a combination of this topic, this audience, this channel, and this content working a lot better, then you can just iterate and continue to improve there. One of the other low-cost channels we saw from the port that was kind of interesting to me, I was a bit surprised, pleasantly surprised, because a lot of more sophisticated, larger enterprises actually struggle to do this, is referral programs. So as Maddie highlighted earlier, some of the key channels that MSPs focus on, especially from a low-cost perspective, are referrals, email, and SEO. And of the 1,000+ MSPs, TSPs that we interviewed, 41% have a referral program in place. I actually think that's fairly high. And for those 41% that have a referral program in place, it drives 50% of their revenue. So that's a really big deal. So many companies and a lot of startups I work for, they sort of don't put enough emphasis or focus on their existing customers. It's all about getting new customers. How do I get new customers? The irony is, the happier your existing customers are, and your ability to leverage their satisfaction and happiness with you for referrals and reference is an amazing driver or growth engine for acquiring new customers. So being able to connect your existing happy customers with new prospects is a very effective way of developing opportunities and closing new business, because a new customer is going to find an existing customer more credible than you, unfortunately. So referral programs are great, and our best practices there, really thinking about 3 elements. First, you have to ask. It sometimes can be uncomfortable to ask. It can be good to have an incentive depending on your audience, and you can make it fun, or you can just have a pure dollar incentive. And then you have to make the process really easy. It can't be more than just a few steps. You can't have too much friction there, because they won't do it otherwise. So before I joined ConnectWise, I was a fractional CMO for 3 years, and I actually had to develop my own business to feed myself. So I know how the challenge of building a pipeline as a salesperson, but also having to do some marketing around that. And I can remember asking an old a CEO I used to work for if the private equity firm he was now working for had any opportunities for me. And he was kind enough to introduce me to the head of growth there, and also to the head of HR there. That led to an opportunity for doing a due diligence assessment, but they didn't end up selecting me, so that didn't work out. And then a few months later, got another small engagement from the director of marketing to help with their positioning and how they go to market on their website, and how they could differentiate as a growth equity private equity firm compared to some of their competitors. And I managed to get that engagement, but it was sort of a freemium engagement. It was only a few $1,000s, but I wanted to build the relationship, show my value. And then what happened 4 or 5 months later, one of their portfolio companies was hiring a new CMO, and guess what? The new CMO didn't show up for their first day of work. Can you believe it?
Wow.
So they came to me and said, "Hey, can you help work with our associate vice president of marketing, help her progress to the vice president of marketing?" And I had a 1.5-year engagement. So that referral took a year to turn into an engagement, but there wasn't a lot of marketing or sales going on. There was just relationship building and showing the value. So making that sort of thinking and referral process integrated into how you go to market can make a significant difference for you. It's not easy. I often struggled with it.
I completely agree. It looks like we actually have a comment from a user who is asking about LinkedIn and how to essentially, yeah, perfect. There we go. Do you have any advice on LinkedIn people who write to us selling anything? I feel or perceive them as opportunistic desperados. Can you suggest what's the best way to contact people so we're not bothered by these type of cold sellers? So I think one of the things that is important is making sure when you're positioning yourself on LinkedIn, if you are doing cold outreach, to make sure you're adding value and not going directly to the sales pitch, essentially, right? So Angus talked a little bit about really making sure that you are providing value up front and having that relationship, because maybe later down the line, it's a better time. So I think that's the key, is trying to provide value. Maybe just saying, hey, we have some information on this, give us a follow, is a lot easier pitch to get your foot in the door than trying to go for that cold pitch right away that may not be super well received.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Maddie makes a really good point. And there's a LinkedIn expert, Natasha Villaseca, whose YouTube videos I've followed before and worked with a little bit over the past, and she works with HubSpot quite a lot. But she has this methodology where you maybe a little bit like boiling a frog, but first you find your target audience, you like them, you engage them, you reply on their comments, and so you start to develop a relationship first, and then, as Maddie said, focus on the value. How can you make a difference? I know I'm afflicted by the same thing you are, which is just this constant barrage of, hey, I can help you develop your pipeline. I can help you get more cold calls, and you just have to filter those out. But I still find some gems in there, so I do stay on top of my LinkedIn inbox. Maddie, you were going to talk a little bit about another stat that we had around vendor support. What do we see there in the MSP survey?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think when we talk about marketing in general, it's an area that a lot of our MSP partners are looking for help. And so one of the stats that was really interesting on the report is that 46% of the people who replied actually want more vendor support when it comes to marketing, to just understand what that looks like. And I think it's really important. And that's where things like partner programs come in. So we have an incredible partner program at ConnectWise that is set up to support MSPs to help them grow. There's a lot of different benefits that are in that program that can help. And one of those is just education and enablement about how to do marketing in general, where to start, how to get going, because it really, a lot of times just getting started is the hardest thing. And then you can almost form a habit as you start to get going. So that's really key. We also have a ton of white labeled marketing content and campaigns that are in that program as well, that are set up to help support partners to get going super easily. I know I talked about email a little earlier, but there's a ton of existing content that you could leverage in that program that's super helpful. And then depending on engagement levels and all that kind of stuff, there's even help too, that we have a team of marketing consultants that really their whole job is to help partners with their marketing, which is really unique as well. So there's a ton of different things that we like to do with partners, and we have teams that are specifically dedicated to help do that as well.
And Maddie mentioned earlier GlassHive. I'm a big HubSpot fan, but I'm a GlassHive fan too. So we have a partnership with GlassHive, and for partners that make the tier, you get GlassHive for free or included in the partnership. And GlassHive is an interesting marketing automation tool because it can really make your life easier, where you just put in your website and GlassHive will pull all your logos and information and create a style guide for you. And then you can take advantage of all the pre-built campaigns and assets that we have and brand them as your own, and then run them from GlassHive or run them from your own marketing automation platform. So it's a great way to get started if you want to have some email campaigns or social campaigns and take some work out of the branding of those. Maddie, there's another question here I thought was interesting. Interested to hear more about engaging channels to consider personas. Usually I see their eyes glaze over. Have there any insights into tactics there or approaches just to get past the, oh my gosh, I'm tired of this email in my inbox or hearing about this person? How do you engage people? What are some of the things you've seen work?
Yeah, I think it's important to first understand, because if you can understand what people are interested in, that is the key. So that's really the importance of building personas in general. I get it, not super fun, like trying to talk about personas. It can be like blah, but it really, the whole point of the exercise is to just understand who they are, where they're at, and that kind of thing. So I think the way that you would talk to a CEO that you're trying to pitch your services to is going to be very different from if you're going to maybe a little bit larger SMB and you're trying to pitch somebody who's leading IT, but you're trying to pitch co-managed services to that person, right? The desires that each of those people have are very, very different. And so I think that's important to consider. It really, at the end of the day, it's all about testing when it comes to channels and how you get in front of them. I think email is key 100%. A lot of our partners do things like webinars to try to get people in on a topic that's a little bit higher level than services. Events are a huge one as well, but events are a little bit more expensive. A webinar you can do pretty cheaply if you can get people there. I've seen people do handwritten invitations to different things to try to cut through the noise. So there's just a bunch of different stuff that you can do, but we can also 100% dive into personas a little bit more in a future episode.
Yeah, and the pain and what keeps people up at night, it does work. Yeah, you just have to know your persona and where they are and what they need. I can remember, for example, working at a finance software company selling to CFOs, and these CFOs are really struggling with bringing their data together and showing the KPIs and what KPIs they should share with the rest of the business, because CFOs can often feel like they're outside of the core business. So they want to be relevant and contribute to the core business. And we had this whole KPI series on what your KPI should be, how to build your KPIs, how to bring the dashboards together. And the CFOs loved it. It would just get really, really good turnout in terms of the in-person events we did and the online ones we did. There's also, you can also go fun and humorous just to build your brand awareness. There's a company I worked with who was also selling to financial controllers, and they had something they called the pun mug. It was one of their swags or giveaways, and these controllers were always asking for that pun mug because they resonated with it and they told other people about it. And so on the mug, it would say, "It's a cruel world." And of course, accrual spelled ACCRUAL, right? Good finance humor right there. But finding that sort of humorous approach or where that real pain is can connect with the audience, even with everything else that's going on. Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah, one other thought on that really quick, Angus, is just that a lot of times we try to push what matters to us to someone, and really what we need to do is reposition that and figure out what the person that we're targeting cares about and position our message to them versus to serve us. And that's always the way.
Well, time's flown by. Really enjoyed talking with you, the audience, and thanks so much for the questions. I hope you join us next time. And Maddie, it was fun doing this with you, this first in our Kickoff series, and look forward to more comments. Feel free to make suggestions of topics or areas you'd like to hear about so we can focus on. And I want to highlight 2 calls to action we recommend. One is you can download this MSP survey at no cost with those 1,000+ responses and insights into MSPs like yourselves and how they're dealing with marketing. And of course, for those of you, if you're in Europe, we have our IT Nation Europe event coming up mid-March. We'd love to see you there. And we'll have our dedicated sessions on the partner program and marketing as well. Maddie, any key takeaways or anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, last thing is make sure you check out our ConnectWise partner program. That's also a huge resource and you can get involved with that today. And then, of course, the most important one is we look forward to seeing you next time on this series.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good one.